The radical, fundamental principles of freedom, rational self-interest, and individual rights. This is the Yaron Brook Show.
All right, everybody, welcome to Yaron Brook Show on this Tuesday, February 17th. Hope everybody's having a fantastic week. And yeah, we've got a news show to do. So I guess we'll just jump into the news. And shows rest of the week on schedule. Tomorrow will be later than usual, but generally there'll be shows all week. All right, let's jump in. Whoa, I haven't put on the video. I have to put on the video. There we go. There we go. Now that's better. All right, so last night, Stephen Colbert hosted his show, and he was supposed to interview on the show Democratic State Senate candidate James Tallariso, all right? He'd actually taped the interview, and he was going to air it on the show yesterday. Now, James Tallariso is a candidate for the Senate on the Democratic side. He's running in the primaries in Texas, in Democratic primaries. He's probably the lead candidate in the Democratic primaries, although it is close. And Democrats are doing quite well in polling relative to Republicans. And if in 2026, this year, if in the Senate race, Democrats flip Texas, that would be huge. But yet, they think possible, given the unpopularity of Donald Trump and Republicans right now. Anyway, CBS decided not to air the segment. It withdrew the segment. And according to Colbert and others, the reason was that supposedly, and this is all supposedly, the FCC threatened CBS if they interviewed Ed. CBS caved, pulled the segment, supposedly citing financial reasons. Right? And this is, of course, presented as a major case of censorship. And of course, if this is actually what happened, it would be censorship. I think it's censorship anyway, but I don't think it's quite as clean cut as the way it was presented. Right? The claim is that Trump told the FCC to prevent this airing because he didn't want to give this Democratic candidate airtime because he didn't want to raise his profile, so he wouldn't be able to beat a Republican in Texas. The segment aired on social media. That's what CBS does. When it doesn't allow a segment to air on air, it releases as social media. And because of all the hoopla around the fact that it didn't allow it to air on the air, it gets more viewership on social media than it ever would have if it was aired on CBS on the Colbert Show. It would have been unnoticed. It would have gone unnoticed. Nobody would have cared. But it's made social media. And of course, Tallariso is, his recognition and interest in him have gone through the roof. And he's probably now leading other Democrats in that primary by a much bigger margin, and probably now is being followed by a bunch of people in Texas. If this was an attempt to decrease the influence, his influence, or the influence of Democrats in Texas, this probably backfired in a big, big way. Colbert yesterday on the show said, quote, he was supposed to be here, but we were told in no uncertain terms by our network lawyers who called us directly that we could not have him on the broadcast. And the question is, why? Why couldn't he be on the broadcast? And was it indeed the FCC calling up and saying, no, you cannot do this? I doubt it. And there seems to be plenty of evidence that that's not indeed what happened. But what is the issue here? The issue here is something called the equal time rule. The equal time rule. And the way the FCC is interpreting that rule right now. So the equal time rule basically says that if you give airtime to one legally qualified political candidate at a time of an election, then the station, the broadcaster, must provide equal opportunities to other candidates for the same office if they request it. So the idea is, if CNBC had allowed Telesino to be on, all the other primary candidates for the Democratic for the Democratic nominee for Senate in the primaries would have been able to come to CBS and demand airtime, and they would have had to abide by it. They would have had to put them on air. And there's a lot of candidates, right? Not a lot of front runners, a lot of candidates. And that's why CBS withdrew it. Now, in the past, this was not applied to interview shows. Indeed, under Section 315 of this law, the law dates back to 1934. Remember 1934, and for a long time afterwards, all broadcasters were licensed by the government. Today you have cable news, you have the internet, but ABC, CBS, NBC are still guided by this 1934 stupid law. Anyway, according to Section 135, equal time does not apply to bona fide newscasters, bona fide news interviews, news documentaries, and on-the-spot news events. Now, in the past, this has included shows like The Tonight Show, Late Night with Seth Meyers, The View, The Daily Show. They have all been excluded. And under this, the Colbert Show should be excluded from the equal time rule. But the new FCC is now saying no. Interview shows, including Colbert and The Late Night and The Daily Show and all these shows, now have to function under the equal time rule. And therefore, they cannot, in that sense, take political sides. They can't interview political candidates unless they're willing to interview all political candidates, or at least offer to interview all political candidates. So there's this uncertainty. Will the FCC or won't the FCC? Will they come after us? Won't they come after us? Now remember, CBS is owned by the Ellisons. The Ellisons are very close to Trump. And I think that the CBS has basically chosen to be super conservative about these things, to take a pro-Trump side on all these things, not to trigger any kind of FCC inquiry. Remember what happened when Barry Weiss pulled that one documentary that ultimately aired and got a lot of views online. And now this on the Colbert Show, and it's not explicit censorship, but it's leaning in that direction. And indeed, the whole equal time rule is probably censorship. It's government dictating what can and cannot be presented on the news. It's also irrelevant right now because of all these other alternative media that exist. It should be dumped together with the entire 1934 Communications Act, and the network should own the spectrum that they use. I mean, a lot of things need to change, but this is particularly stupid. But it gives the FCC the ability to sometimes implement, sometimes not implement. And as a consequence, keep broadcasters, will they or won't they? Will they, won't they? What will they do? And this lends itself to censorship, to self-censorship. Self-censorship, but not just people not speaking because they're cowards, people not speaking because they're afraid of government action. And I think that boils down to, censorship. Censorship. So yeah, this is bad, and we're going to see more of this. And again, with Trump's relationship with the Ellisons, not good. Not good when the president of the United States is very close to the people who own the media network. It starts sounding like Putin and Orban. Not good if those relationships are so tight that the people who run the networks are trying to figure out what would be good for the for the guy in the White House and what wouldn't be, and adjusting their news coverage and adjusting who they interview to that. This backfired from Trump's perspective anyway, or from the Republicans' perspective, because it does seem like Tellerisso's name recognition has just exploded. And this is, if anything, increased his probability that he could beat a Republican in Texas, not decreased it. I still think it's a long shot for a Democrat to win Texas, but you never know, particularly with the large Hispanic vote and how Hispanics are being antagonized by ICE. I mean, I've seen many stories now where up into, through the last election, South Texas, areas that are dominantly Hispanic, were all turning Republican, and how that overwhelmingly seems to be reversing, and that in the next elections, all those areas will turn back to being Democratic as they feel betrayed by Trump, although he told them what he was going to do. It's not like he did something he didn't warn them in advance of. They've got nobody else to blame but themselves. Nobody else to blame but themselves. All right. That was an interesting story first thing in the morning today. A lot of interesting things going on with Iran. Conflicting things. And again, impossible to say what exactly is going to happen and what Trump intends and what is true and what is not. So the Iranian and the American delegations met in, was it in Zurich or Geneva, in Switzerland, in Geneva, this morning, our time this morning. And coming out of that meeting, the Iranians said, "Yeah, we've agreed on some principles for a deal. A deal is definitely possible." And my view of that is that's the Iranians trying to delay. They want another meeting, and then they'll negotiate some more principles, and then they'll disagree about a few things, and then they'll delay, and then they'll want another meeting, and then on and on and on and on and on it will go. And that is Iranian strategy. And that's what it looks like the Iranians are doing here. Supposedly Tehran has floated enrichment pauses and has offered these amazing business deals to the Trump administration. They get oil and they get minerals and rare earth materials and who knows what else. They're not willing to touch the ballistic missiles. They're not willing to budge on any of the other demands that supposedly Trump is making. Who knows if he's actually making them? I don't know what's actually going on there. But at this point, Tehran, I think, just wants to delay, hoping Trump gets tired, decides not to pull the trigger, and cut some mediocre deal in order to get all these goodies that Tehran is dangling in front of him. Right. So that came out this morning, and it looked like, it really looked like this is going to continue indefinitely, and that these negotiations will continue. I mean, the foreign minister actually said there was an understanding has been reached on main principles of negotiation with the United States. Sounded pretty ominous, sounded pretty bad for those of us who believe there shouldn't be a deal with Iran. Okay, so that happened in the morning. And then a little later, I read this. White House officials are conveying messages to Israel. The talks between the U.S. and Iran have reached a dead end, and that the chances of progress are zero due to Tehran's refusal to meet Trump's administration demands. Israel is stepping up operational preparedness for possibility of a direct military confrontation, with the understanding that the path to negotiations has exhausted itself and an attack on Iran could become a reality in the immediate future. Immediate. You know, the USS Ford is still on the way. It's probably still a couple of weeks before it gets to the Middle East. So immediately, immediate future doesn't seem real. On the other hand, and there are lots of hands here, lots and lots of hands. More and more planes are flying across the Atlantic to Europe and then on to the Middle East. F-22s now, and more F-15s, and refueling aircraft, and and surveillance aircraft, C-3s, and pretty much, the United States again is amassing a huge military force in striking distance of Iran. So, and they're giving these signals to Israelis, and again, coming out of Israeli media, it seems clear that Israel is preparing for an imminent attack and the repercussions regarding Israel. And indeed, most of the reports are saying that the United States, in an unprecedented move, really, will encourage Israel to participate in the attacks. If you think about Gulf War I, and if you think about Gulf War II, the Bushes, father and son, created coalitions to attack Iraq in this case, and the one member they explicitly excluded and was not invited to join the coalition was Israel. This time, at least rumors have it, I don't know the truth, Israel is being invited, almost required, to join in. So again, Israel is preparing for that possibility. We will see if that is true or not when the day comes that these attacks actually happened. In addition, Khamenei, who is the supreme leader of Iran, while these negotiations are going on, keeps tweeting. Yes, Ayatollah Khamenei is on Twitter. If you don't follow Ayatollah Khamenei, you're missing out on some great posts. Anyway, Ayatollah Khamenei is posting all kinds of antagonistic posts against the Trump administration and basically claiming there's nothing to negotiate, they'll never compromise, and Trump could go to hell, basically. And then he published this today. No, this is, today, this morning. He writes, "This island of corruption is only one example." Anybody know the reference to the island of corruption? That is the Epstein Island. The Epstein Island. Okay, so this island of corruption is only one example. There is much more of this. Just as this was not apparent and then became exposed, there are many other things that will soon come to light. Ayatollah Khamenei, from his bunker in some undisclosed location in Iran, is tweeting that if Trump attacks Iran, implicit, I'm reading into it maybe, if Trump attacks Iran, he's going to expose more islands of corruption relevant to Trump. One reading of the tweet. You could have a different reading of the tweet, but that's certainly one interpretation of the tweet. So Khamenei is ready for the PR war. He doesn't realize. I don't think the Iranians have any clue. I really don't think they have a clue of what would actually happen. Now, I don't know that this will happen, but what will actually happen if the United States unleashes its air power on Iran? Just the air power that's in the Middle East plus B-2s that can fly in from anywhere. If they just unleash what they have in the Middle East right now, I don't think the Iranians or most of these commentators or most of these military experts have any clue what kind of a hell the United States Air Force and Navy and missiles can inflict on Iran. Now, whether they will choose to do so and the extent. Now, supposedly, again, Israel is assuming that the United States is going all in, that they are going to, basically devastate Iran, devastate its nuclear facilities, devastate its ballistic missiles, and devastate its infrastructure, and then devastate its command and control, but also its leadership. Again, I don't know if that is true or not. I don't know if they'll do it or not, but they certainly have the capabilities. I mean, I don't know. Everybody thinks that wars are going to be like Ukraine, Russia, or, everybody looks at, like, the most impressive war probably was the 12-day war, Israel-Iran. But take what Israel did in that war, and now bring in the U.S. Air Force with all of its capabilities and all of its ballistic missiles, its cruise missiles, and everything else, all the technology the United States brings to the table that Israel doesn't have and can't bring to play, given how far Iran is from Israel. And what you get is complete dominance. Complete dominance. And then it's only a question of will. To what extent do they apply it, and to what extent are they willing to go all the way? One other story out of Iran, and this is pretty amazing. Several cities in Iran today are seeing mass demonstrations. So the Iranians are going out into the streets, knowing what the regime did just a few weeks ago in killing tens of thousands of Iranian demonstrators. They're back in the streets. They're basically clad in clothes of mourning for those who died a few weeks ago. And there are clashes in several of the cities in Iran. The regime is again, it appears, using violence against them. And yet they're still out there. Now, today and tomorrow are the end of the 40-day traditional Iranian mourning period. So this represents, as part of the mourning, they're going out and demonstrating. But they're chanting against the regime. They're demanding regime change, knowing the regime is capable of shooting them all. The courage, the determination of these people is truly impressive. And, they are heroes. They're standing up for their own rights. They're standing up for their own lives. They're risking their lives in an attempt to bring about real change. And it only sharpens the possibility of a Trump betrayal of these people, in that he told them to go out in the streets and help was coming, and it never came. Now, maybe it's time for the help to come. The Islamic regime, in response, has basically imposed a de facto martial law in many of the major cities. They're trying to stop these demonstrations. They're trying to stop people gathering together. They're separating them out. They've got barricades in the streets. They're monitoring everything that is happening. What is happening in Iran is historic. And what happens in the next few days, I think, is going to be significant. Luckily, my wife is flying back from Israel. She leaves 6 a.m. Wednesday morning, so in a few hours, Israel time. So main thing is, for me right now, she gets out of there before the action starts. So after 6 a.m., Donald Trump, feel free to launch whatever attacks you need in Iran and get Israel to participate with you. All right, as Witkoff and who's with Witkoff? Kushner, Jared Kushner, and Witkoff are going in one room to negotiate with the Iranians. Then they, I guess, go to another hotel, or maybe it's just across the hall, and they go to negotiate with the Ukrainians. So Kushner and Witkoff are negotiating with the Ukrainians. Basically, Witkoff and Kushner are, I think, have now been officially designated as representatives of Russia in the negotiations, because they're basically pushing the Russian line. The Americans have been pushing Ukraine to basically allow for Russia to annex Donbass, pushing the Ukrainians. This is going on today. This meeting was really the U.S. ganging up again on Ukraine and kind of trying to force Ukraine to make decisions that are bad for Ukraine itself and bad for Europe. As a consequence, it seems like delegations from the UK and France walked into the talks today that were being held between Russia, the US, and Ukraine. It's 2 against 1, to bolster the Ukrainian side. So the Europeans basically made it clear that there's not going to be any agreement without the Europeans being there. They're not going to leave the Ukrainians to be eaten up by the Trump administration together with the Russians, acting as one front, it would seem. Now, again, we will see what happens with these negotiations. As I've told you for months, really for a year now, Witkoff is horrible. Really, really, really horrible. I don't know Jared Kushner, but Jared Kushner has big financial incentives to kind of deal with Iran. It could be that the Iranians are offering Kushner and Witkoff financial interests in Iran. They've got interest in the Middle East. They're heavily, heavily influenced, both of them by the Qataris, by the Saudis. The Saudis are massive investors in Kushner's private equity funds. Their interests are aligned with not the best people in the Middle East, certainly not with Israel, and ultimately not clear with the United States. And I think the same is true with Russia. I think Putin has dangled oil deals, rare earth material deals, mining deals, all kinds of deals. And Kushner and Witkoff see billions. They see the dollar signs in front of their eyes. They have no interest in Ukraine. They don't care about Ukraine. They are motivated by Trump's love of Putin, plus the kind of financial interest they can get out of Russia in a compromise. That's the reality. That's the administration we have. The only way Ukraine survives all this is if the Europeans stand up to Trump. And the Europeans standing up to Trump, Ukraine already doesn't get any weapon aid from the United States, but the United States is still willing to sell weapons to Europe and then be transferred to Ukraine. I guess it could withdraw that. A lot of the intelligence now coming into the Ukrainians is being supplied by the Europeans instead of the U.S., so as to minimize the damage of the U.S. stopping to share intelligence. Ukraine and the Europeans are starting to place themselves on independent feet, if you will, less reliant on the United States because they can't trust this administration in what it will do next. Also, with regard to Ukraine, for the first time in a long time, we can report that Ukraine is actually making progress on the front line. According to a number of news outlets analyzing satellite data, the armed forces of Ukraine have captured about 200 square kilometers of territory between Wednesday and Sunday last week. This is about the same size area that Russia captured in all of December, which represented the biggest gains the Russians had made since 2023, since middle of 2023. Ukraine did it in a few days. Russia took months and months and months to make that progress. It also looks like the amount of weapons flowing into Ukraine has increased significantly from Europe. I've also read that the Ukrainians now have F-16s up in the air. Finally, they've got a squadron of F-16s piloted, at least some of the planes, piloted by foreign pilots who have signed contracts with the Ukrainians, basically as mercenaries, and who are flying these F-16s. The F-16s are crucial in downing some of the ballistic missiles and some of the cruise missiles and some of the drones that Russia sends Ukraine's way every single night. But they could also be used and be helpful actually on the battlefield to give Ukrainian forces some air support, which they have not had since the beginning of the war. The reason given for the sudden advance of the Ukrainian forces might have to do with the blocking of the Starlink satellites on the Russian side. If you remember, we talked about this, I think, last week, about the fact that a bunch of terminals, Starlink terminals that the Russians were using, that in a supposedly pirated way were blocked by Starlink, and suddenly Russia had lost its command and control and some of its ability to deploy drones because of that, and it looks like the Ukrainians took advantage of that and took a bunch of territory. Talk about Russia. Alexander Dugin, one of the most evil people on planet Earth, maybe the most evil, philosopher certainly, thinker on planet Earth. This guy is real devil. He is often considered to be Putin's philosopher, although it's not clear how much direct contact they have. But he is the ideologue of Russian nationalism, the ideologue that believes that Russia should control all of Europe. He's a postmodernist mystic mishmash of left and right. He had two tweets today that are worthy of mention. Two tweets worthy of mention. Alexander Dugin writes, "The left needs to ditch woke ideology, DEI, uncontrolled migration, progressivism, and atheism. The right needs to drop Ayn Rand, capitalism, racism, individualism, and anti-socialism. The true leftists and true right-wingers have one enemy. His name is Jeffrey Epstein." I don't know if you get that. Are you getting this? I have to read that to you again. This is Dugin, right? The left needs to ditch woke ideology, DEI, uncontrolled migration, progressivism, and atheism. The right needs to drop Ayn Rand, capitalism, racism, individualism, and anti-socialism. In other words, and they need to unite under the banner of socialism, statism, and collectivism, because the right needs to abandon individualism. The left's already there. As long as the left abandons DEI and woke, right? True leftists and true rightists, right-wingers, have one enemy. His name is Jeffrey Epstein. Now, what does Jeffrey Epstein represent for Dugin? Here's what it represents. This is another tweet from a little later. Yes, about the same time. "This is the moment," Dugin writes, "we've been waiting for. The right and the left finally have to team up against the satanic rule of big capital. Capitalism is Epstein. It's his global princely empire. Capitalism is Epstein. It's his global princely empire." Now, what's he advocating here? He is advocating of this unity of left and right that I've been saying is our future. And what unites them is a hatred of capital. A hatred of capital, hatred of Epstein. Epstein is not only capital, but what else does Epstein represent? Jews. Jews, money, capitalism. This is Marx. So Dugin is calling on the left and the right to unite, to fight capitalism. Capitalism as that system controlled and manipulated by the Jews, by rich Jews who control globalist, cosmopolitan capital. Now, never mind that Epstein was a complete statist, hung around with what's his name, Noam Chomsky, and was a crony all the way through, advocated for stakeholder capitalism, and, was an anti-capitalist through and through. But he was Jewish, and he was rich, and he was connected, and he was a globalist, cosmopolitan. But I love it. This is so perfect. Dugin represents in our world an insistence on Middle Ages, Dark Ages philosophy. He is a principled, if you can even apply that term to him, collectivist, mystic, statist. He is a Russian Orthodox and worse, pagan, mystic. He is a collectivist through and through. Notice the one thing he wants the right to abandon, individualism, and Ayn Rand, of course, as the representative of individualism. He wants individualism rejected. Now, he also wants racism, both of left and right, to be rejected. He's not a racist. He's a collectivist of nations, a power, but not a racist. So he wants the left and the right to abandon racism and to unite and to abandon atheism, to unite under mysticism, religion, for the sake of collectivism, by abandoning any remnant of individualism, and statism. That's the point of his, the right needs to stop being anti-socialist. He claims to reject both communism and fascism. But he's really a fascist, through and through. He's an out-and-out statist. And look, he's incredibly influential. I'm just looking. He has 410,000 followers on Twitter. But in Russia, incredibly influential. Jordan Peterson has spoken positively about him. Many on the right look up to him. Steve Bannon considers him the great philosopher, the great thinker of our time. This is, this is a man predicting the future right now. The future is a unity of left and right going after capitalism. Kind of scary, but you can see it kind of in the air. That seems to be where we're heading. All right, let's move from Dugin to tariffs. Let me remind everybody of our super chat. You can ask questions, shape the show. You can also do a sticker, value for value. We've got targets for the first hour, second hour, $250 basically an hour. Jump in. We need about $100 to wrap up this hour. We've got 20 minutes to make it. 5 $20 questions will get us there. So instead of asking lots and lots of $2 questions, jump in with the 20 just to help us get to our targets today. All right. There is a new paper out in the National Bureau of Economic Research. It's a working paper, but it's a new paper out that looks at the macroeconomic effects of tariffs. Evidence from U.S. historical data. So I'm just going to read you the abstract because, we're not going to delve deep into the methodology of the data. But here's the abstract. We studied the macroeconomic effects of tariff policy using U.S. historical data from 1840 till 2024. We construct a narrative series of plausible exogenous tariff changes based on major legislative actions, multilateral negotiations, and temporary surcharges. Exogenous just means from the outside, so from politics, it's not arising out of the economic process. and use it as an instrument to identify a structural tariff shock. This is basically the conclusion. Tariff increases are contradictory. Imports fall sharply. Exports decline with a lag. And output and manufacturing, that's what's important, output and manufacturing activity drop persistently. So when we predicted that raising the tariffs would decrease manufacturing in the United States, it looks like that's the way it's behaved throughout American history. It says the shock transmits through both supply and demand channels. Prices rise in the full sample, but fall post-World War II, a pattern consistent with changes in monetary policy response and with stronger international retaliation and reciprocity in the modern trade regime. So they're looking at all the different differences and controlling for all the different patterns throughout American history. And the conclusion, the ultimate conclusion is output and manufacturing activity drop persistently. In other words, wealth goes down, standard of living goes down because output, production goes down. And even manufacturing, which you're trying to protect with most tariffs, goes down. Pretty stunning, but completely consistent with what I and Scott Litzicum and Phil Magnus and a bunch of others have been telling you from day one. Scientific research keeps coming back and showing us to be correct. So does the data coming out of the US for 2025. No jobs created, and a decline in manufacturing jobs, a substantial decline in manufacturing jobs and in manufacturing output. That's the consequence of tariffs. Now, in addition, the other thing that tariffs that the US imposes on the world is they create incentives for other countries to start cutting deals between themselves. Now, we've documented this already with the EU deal with India, the EU deal with South America, but now there's even a bigger deal on the table. It looks like Canada has joined the EU in negotiating with the Trans-Pacific Trade Alliance. That is this massive Asian bloc that does not include China, but pretty much everybody else in across the Pacific, both Latin American countries, but primarily Japan, South Korea, Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapore, Philippines, Australia, New Zealand, all these countries that border the Pacific, and they're preparing basically to sign or negotiate a deal that would provide for dramatically reduced tariffs between Asia, excluding China, Europe, and Canada. And this would be massive. So it could be, in a kind of roundabout, bizarre way, that Trump's tariffs actually increase the amount of free trade in the world out there. As Ian Berman puts it in Twitter, Trump deserves credit for this decision, driving more free trade and globalization around the world. So the story is the EU and 12-nation Indo-China bloc, this includes India, I guess, are opening talks to explore forming one of the largest global economic alliances. And Canada's Connie is spearheading the discussions. I think this is fantastic. Good for them. And if the United States wants to go along this route of like mercantilism, let it do it alone and let the United States suffer while the rest of the world enjoys the massive benefits of actual free trade. All right. How did we get to this? We're skipping. Wait a second. All right, let's jump to that. All right. We're starting to see kind of the first actions coming from Mamdani in New York City and what he's doing. I think the new budget, his proposed budget is due tomorrow and will be voted by the city council. And it's got a massive, massive hole. Mamdani is proposing to spend a lot more money than the New York City government is going to bring in. And now this is not just Mamdani's fault. This is, of course, a budget that was geared towards a massive deficit from the previous administrations, going back a long time. Mamdani's making it worse because he doesn't want to cut anything and he wants to add all of his favorite things to throw money at. So the first step was Mamdani wants to raise taxes on the rich. But in order to do that, he has to get, because of the way New York works, he has to get the state of New York to vote on it. That is, it can't be decided at the city level. It has to be decided at the state level. So Mamdani has gone to Albany and asked them to raise taxes on the rich, and the governor of New York is not sympathetic and basically said no. And he's stuck. In the meantime, the governor of New York has agreed to basically send him a $1.5 billion bailout. So Mamdani begged for more taxes, basically got a no. The governor's afraid that all these New Yorkers will leave and the state will lose revenue. Instead, the governor is committed to an extra, above and beyond what the state of New York gives the city anyway, an extra $1 billion this fiscal year and another $500 million next fiscal year. So $1.5 billion in to try to cover the shortfall. Now, the shortfall might be as big as $12 billion. So it's not clear the $1.5 billion are going to do that much to help. But now they're claiming, we'll see. Now they're claiming that maybe the gap isn't $12 billion, maybe it's only $5 billion. If it's $5 billion, $1.5 billion really helps. So, we'll see. They're playing numbers games, right? Now, Mamdani is still crusading for a tax hike. He's trying to push Hochul, the governor of New York, to raise taxes on people making $1 million by 2% in the Big Apple, just in the city. So far, they pushed back on it, hasn't passed. So this is temporary. We'll see where that goes. Okay, so that avenue is difficult, right? So instead, now he is proposing an increase to the city property taxes. Now that I think he might be able to get just at the city level without getting state approval. So today he opened the possibility of New York City property taxes going up this year. Mamdani set to unveil tomorrow or later this week. Maybe today, this afternoon. $127 billion preliminary budget proposal for next fiscal year, which begins in July. As part of that, Mamdani will float raising property taxes, which he can do without state approval, as I said, to close the $5.4 billion revenue shortfall. Now, again, we will see what, if that passes, I guess the city council or whoever needs to do that. But if he can't raise money from the taxes on the ultra wealthy, the alternative, of course, is to raise property taxes, and that hits the wealthy more than others because, but it also hits the middle class, and people might not be happy with him over that. So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out over the next few weeks. But taxes are going up in New York, one way or the other. Taxes are going up in New York. Now, in addition, Mamdani has basically declared war on delivery apps, on the gig economy. Like they don't treat their employees right. And this has been an ongoing struggle in New York. New York has imposed a minimum wage on the various DoorDashers, Ubers, and all the different smaller competitors, they all now have to pay minimum wage. Then there was a big fight about tipping. When the companies had to had to basically pay a minimum wage, then they didn't include the tip in the amount that riders saw when they booked a cab. It was only added, you only added it later. Now the city of New York is forcing them to include it in the price so that they choose a tip before they ever get the ride. And generally, Mamdani believes that, and the socialists that Mamdani has hired to in his administration believe that the workers in the gig economy are being exploited, and that the city needs to protect them. And the city's launched a number of lawsuits against gig companies. There's one gig company called MotoClick, which they argue has blatantly ignored the minimum wage law. A lot of energy in New York City right now is going towards trying to make running one of these gig economy companies as difficult as possible. Note that this is a huge industry in New York. There are like 80,000 people who work in the gig economy. Drivers, bicyclists who deliver stuff. And, this is all presented as an effort to defend their, quote, supposed rights to a decent wage and a decent living and whatever. And at the same time is a real possibility that it basically destroys their livelihood, destroys these companies, and makes life for New Yorkers more difficult. Because one thing that happens when you raise minimum wages is prices go up. The companies have to make their money somewhere. And what happens if prices go up is people tip less. So indeed, tips plummeted by nearly 50% when they raised the minimum wage, when they imposed the minimum wage. And as a consequence, it's not clear drivers are better off. They might be significantly worse off in terms of the total wages they're bringing in. The whole thing is ridiculous. Mary Elaine says living wage is an anti-concept. Of course it's an anti-concept. Living wage it's in quotation marks. It's a completely anti-concept. It means nothing. Living by what standard? Living how? Living by what means? Some people live in the world on $2 a day. Is that a living wage? So the whole thing is ridiculous. Anyway, we'll keep track of Mamdani and what he does. In the meantime, we've got a new wonderful example of the Jones Act. I always explain the Jones Act, and people go, no, that's not real. It can't be real. And yet it is. Here's what the Jones Act says. If you're transporting goods between any two American ports, the ship transporting the goods must be American-built, American-owned, flagged, and American, what do you call it, crewed. The crew has to be all Americans. Crew has to be Americans. Ship is the only owned by Americans, built by Americans. There are only 72 Jones Act ships in the world. So, for example, if you want to ship something from the U.S. to Puerto Rico, it has to be a Jones Act boat, which means there's very little competition for that route. And that means that prices here are more expensive. And it also means that it's easier to ship certain things not from the United States, outside the United States, even if they involve things like tariffs. So, for example, Puerto Rico gets its natural gas from other countries in Central America, not from the United States. Because there's no LNG, natural gas ship, that is a Jones Act ship that can transport between two American ports. If you get on a cruise to Alaska in Seattle, the ship will always stop in Canada. Why? You're going to Alaska. because it's not allowed to go from Seattle to Alaska directly, because that's 2 ports. And there's only one cruise ship in the world that is a Jones Act ship. So you stop in Alaska, that's allowed. If you take a cruise from California to Hawaii, the cruise ship almost always, except for this one boat, stops in Mexico. Again, why? Because you have to stop in a foreign country because you can't go directly from one American port to another. I've given this other example from before. If you're in Boston and you need more natural gas because the pipelines are full and you need more natural gas, and you want to bring it in liquefied natural gas by ship, it's not going to come from Houston. It's not going to come from Baltimore, where they have LNG depots. It's going to come before the war from Russia, or it's going to come from Kuwait or Qatar because of the Jones Act. If you wonder why there's so many trucks, so many trucks on the I-95 that goes along the East Coast, that I-95. Why are there so many trucks? It can't be cheap to transport containers on a truck. Why not ship them all on a boat? Oh, because there are not enough boats, because of the Jones Act. Now, lots of other shippers would be happy to ship stuff from Houston to Boston, from Baltimore to Boston, from Charleston as a port to Boston, or to Baltimore, to any of these ports. Lots of shipping companies would do that, but they don't have Jones Act boats, so they can't do it. Here's the latest example. California. California has a shortage of fuel. A lot of refiners are leaving the state. They can't make any money, and they're shutting down. So California needs to import refined fuels. Refined fuels. So here's how refined fuels are getting to California. Your supplies of gasoline are being shipped to California from places like Texas and Louisiana, where the refineries are, via the Bahamas, and then through the Panama Canal. Why? Because the Jones Act, a 106-year-old maritime law, does not require goods shipped between U.S. ports to travel in U.S.-built, owned, and operated vessels, which are in short supply and expensive to charter, and therefore they have to stop on the way in places like the Bahamas. And we don't have enough pipelines to ship it through pipeline. So California is increasing its gasoline imports, with more than 40% coming from the Bahamas in November. But wait a minute, the Bahamas doesn't refine anything? Yeah, the Bahamas get it from the refineries in the U.S., and from the Bahamas it's shipped to California. This is the stupidity of American lawmakers who can't even come together to repeal this stupid law, which was supposed to protect the maritime industry in the United States. It was passed 106 years ago. In the meantime, the number of ships is down. America doesn't really build any ships. Shipyards are gone, have disappeared. Very few people work on ships. Who is this protecting? Nobody. Trump has had several opportunities to repeal this law. He objects. He will not repeal the Jones Act. And Congress doesn't have a veto-proof majority to repeal it, and so it's on the books, makes all of our lives more expensive and just stupid, and more dangerous because there are more trucks on the road than there should be. And nobody cares. And imagine, if you cannot repeal a stupid law like the Jones Act that has no upside, no benefit, and a very small interest group lobbying for it, how can you do anything worthwhile in the American government? How can you get anything done through Congress or even through the executive? It's just a great illustration of how completely dysfunctional our government is. All right. I want to show you a picture of Spike Lee. Don't be offended. This is Spike Lee. Now note what he's wearing. He's wearing in a sense, a shirt designed as a keffiyeh to represent his sympathy for the Palestinian cause. He's got a band with the colors of Hamas on it and with, Palestinian flags all across to carry his little, what do you call that, man bag or whatever they call that. Here's another photo, closer up. There's Sheik. Whoops, what did I do? I didn't mean to do that. No, I didn't mean to do that. There it is. He's got a big cross over this, right? Something, and he's got that, it looks like a very expensive Rolex watch there. But this is how he showed up to the All-Star game, the NBA All-Star game. Now you might think he did this because there's a Palestinian player playing in the All-Star game and he came to show support. No, there is no Palestinian player. He did this at the All-Star game because there is an Israeli player, first time ever, an Israeli player, I don't even know what team he plays for, playing in the NBA who got voted into the All-Star game for the first time ever. And he's doing this to protest the Israeli, to piss the Israeli off, to get him off his game. He's doing this as a slap in the face to a 20-something-year-old who's, this is one of the most, I'm sure, exciting things that's ever happened in his life. He's playing in the NBA All-Star game as a young man. The first Israeli ever. Of course, this Israeli, like all Israelis, probably served in the IDF, and that pisses Spike Lee off even more. I mean, this guy's a bastard. He's an evil bastard. I mean, this is just vicious. It's a vicious cause that he is advocating for, and he's doing it in the most vicious of ways. I regret now ever seeing any Spike Lee movies ever. I just saw one recently. I don't like them anyway. I don't know why I go see any of them. I'm not going to see any of his movies again. This guy is a hater. He is a disgusting hater. I want to have nothing to do with him. Nothing to do with him. All right. That is it. That is the news for today, February 17th, Tuesday. Thank you for joining me for this news show. We made the first hour goal. Thank you, guys. And we did it, thanks to a number of the super chats, but also some stickers. Glenn, thank you, $50. Thank you, Glenn. Dave, $50. Thank you, Dave. Those are 2 stickers at $50. And then John had a sticker, and Mary Aline had a sticker, and Nature Observer had a sticker. Let's see who else. Exit and Jonathan Honing. Thank you, guys. Really, really appreciate it. Thank you for the support. This is great. We're still about 200 short for the second hour. We are entering the second hour now. So there's still room. There are not a lot of questions, and there are almost none at the $20 level. So please consider doing some $20 questions would be great, and we could chip away at that goal. That would be fantastic. We've got monthly goals to achieve, so getting to that $500 is important. All right, our sponsors. I want to remind you, I will be in London February 28th. I'm not getting a lot of registrations, so if you want to come, and if there are no registrations, or if there are few registrations, I'll cancel the event. But if you'd like to hang out for 4 hours talking about capitalism, it's £300. I think it's $325 because Eventbrite takes a fee. So I think it's $325. pounds to attend the seminar, 4 hours, plus dinner afterwards to hang out. And it'll be in central London, and small group, so you get plenty of time for back and forth, plenty of Q&A, plenty of time to hang out. I hope you can come. If you are in London, or if you're in the UK, or if you're in Europe and like to attend, please sign up now so I know whether I'm doing it and, you know, what size room I should rent. You can go to yaronbrookshow.com, yaronbrookshow.com, scroll down to the kind of calendar of events, a list of events. Go to the one on February 20th, click on tickets, and go there and read about the event and then decide if you want to attend. But I think we'll have a good time, and it'd be great to see you and great for you to be there. So please, if you're planning on coming and you're waiting at the last minute to sign up, please don't. We will be raising prices on Sunday. So make sure to register before Sunday, and ideally today, or tomorrow. So I start having accounts, because I'm worried that everybody will sign up at the last minute, but I might cancel it before that. So we'll all miss out. Anyway, Ayn Rand Institute has a conference in Porto, Portugal on April 18th. These conferences are really a lot of fun if you've attended one in the past. If not, you can talk to people who have. You should try to come. It's a lot of fun. It's small. It's more intimate than Ocon. And you get a lot of time with the speakers and with the students that are there. A lot of students on scholarship are going to be there. You can also, if you're young, under 34, apply for a scholarship. AynRand.org/start here. If you're not young, you can get a discount. 26YBS10 is the discount code. Alex Epstein is also a sponsor of this show. Alex is the world expert on all things energy, and a lot of things are happening on the energy front, from the vast growing need for energy that the United States and really the world is experiencing because of the AI boom, but also the deregulation that's happening by the Trump administration. It's just a lot of action, a lot of stuff going on when it comes to energy. You can follow along all of the developments by following Alex, alexepstein.substack.com. Robert Hendershot with 2 T's, hendershotwealth.com/YBS. If you're facing a big capital gains tax bill sometime in your future, maybe it's a year, maybe 2 years, maybe 5 years in the future, you can work with Hendershot on planning for that and basically working to eliminate the tax bill, or to reduce it dramatically, or to defer it indefinitely. And so check it out. You can check out my interview with Robert Hendershot on the playlists in the playlist for sponsors. Robert Hendershot interview. You'll enjoy it, and you can also check out the website hendershotwealth.com/YBS. Finally, Defenders of Capitalism is a website for a program of lectures and seminars and defending capitalism from an economic, political, and philosophical perspective, moral perspective. You should check it out. Michael Williams does a phenomenal job creating it, setting it up, and I've worked with him for years on this program, particularly the leadership program in the Rockies. So check it out. All right, and everybody out there, please consider becoming a Patreon supporter. Please consider becoming a monthly supporter of the show. If you do it at $10, you can get a free the audio, the podcast version with no commercials. A lot of you have been asking, how do we get commercial free? Just if you go to Patreon and you sign up for anything $10 or above, you will get a feed to your Apple Podcast or whatever podcasting app you have that will be free of commercials. So please, consider doing that. At $25 or more, you get to participate in the what do you call it? The AMA on the panel with the AMA. At $250, you get a one-on-one with me every 3 months, and $500, you get a one-on-one with me every month. So, it'd be great if I could just get a few people at the $500 level. That would take a lot of the monetary, financial stress off of this show. So thank you for considering that. All right. Phone Fixer Thank you. $100. Really, really appreciate that. That is incredibly generous. Thank you. Keep up the good work. Value for value. Thank you, Phone Fixer. I really appreciate it. Jack says, I have been going back through all of your Rules of Life shows. Thank you for the guidance for living on this earth. I certainly appreciate it. Well, wow. Thank you. I'm so happy that people keep going back to those. I'm happy that people are discovering those. I probably should do more of them, but I feel like when I do more, I'm repeating myself, and they're all available right there, and they were pretty good the first time. I'll consider doing more of those or more of that style. But I'm glad the shows are having a life beyond kind of the live and the few days or weeks after I take them live. So you can check it out. The playlists of all of them. I think you can also through Patreon get a playlist with no commercials as a podcast. I think at a certain level, I can't remember which level of donation you can do that. So check that out as well. Another reason to go to Patreon. But yeah, thank you, Jack, and I'm really, really glad that you're enjoying those. Michael, the U.S. is adding 1,000 new millionaires a day thanks to the stock market. Yep. I hope we don't reach a point soon where we're destroying 1,000 new millionaires a day because of the stock market. So this can go very, very much in both directions, and very quickly. So let's hope this bull market continues. It can't continue forever. At some point, there'll be a correction. But the longer it continues, the more I benefit. My money's all in there. Not just in the U.S. market, but in stocks broadly. Michael says, too many small-minded, hateful people in this world. Yes. Or another way to say it is, too many unthinkers in this world. Too many preconceptual or perceptual level thinkers in this world. Because that's where the small-minded and hateful comes from. Michael also says, the demonization of immigrants today must be largely similar to the demonization of Jews in Germany. People just want something to hate. Yeah, it's also similar to the demonization of immigrants in the early part of the 20th century, leading up to basically the massive restriction in immigration in 1924. I mean, if you look at the cartoons then, and if you look at the rhetoric then, very similar today. It just replaced Nicaraguans or Haitians with Italians and Irish, and you get the same mentality. So this is a recurring theme, sadly, through history. There have been very few eras in human history where people have been embracing and welcoming to foreigners, to people who are different than themselves. Simon, have you seen the new Palestinian constitution? I briefly saw something, and it was co-authored, but it was like helped along by the French. Macron sent a delegation to help them with the constitution. It's supposed to be a real monstrosity, and doesn't mention Israel once, which is interesting, right? Because the whole thing is a two-state solution, but this constitution doesn't recognize a second state. It recognized only a Palestinian state. And the French went along with this, which is, I guess, not surprising. They love to stab you in the back whenever they can. Roman, Morocco moving on a solution similar to the Iraqi Kurdish areas with the Sawaris in Western Sahara. Very good news. The conflict might end. Yeah, I mean, that would be good news for the people of Morocco. That conflict is stupid, as most of these conflicts are. A resolution that allows these people some autonomy, while, makes sense, I guess, particularly in a very tribalistic part of the world. Ideally, you would need autonomy. There would be no tribalism. That's not the world in which we live. Roman, Reza Pahlavi explicitly mentioned the protection of individual rights as one of the 4 pillars of his transition period in an interview. That's great. I mean, he seems like a good guy. I hope he is, and I hope the Trump administration uses him, if you will, emboldens him to lead the opposition once they destroy the current regime. Let's hope all of that happens, because he seems like a good guy. There was an objectivist years ago who passed away a while ago, but who worked with Reza Pahlavi and introduced him to Ayn Rand's work and introduced him to the concept of individual rights. So for those of you who remember Sidney Gunst, I think Sidney, it's sad that he's not alive to see this, but Sidney worked with Reza, and there might be significant objectivist influences on Reza Pahlavi. And certainly, I don't think the individual rights comes from nowhere. I think it comes from material and work that Sidney did with him maybe 10, 15 years ago. You never know how our work filters out there and touches and impacts world events. It really hard to tell. Roman says, what do you think of regions seceding, declaring independence from nation states? Should Catalonia be an independent country now? No. I'm generally against secession. The only reason to secede is to establish a more free country, a significantly freer country. But almost nobody wants to secede to do that. That was the reason the American Revolution was justified. It was a secession in order to establish something better, something freer. The Catalonians don't want to secede to make something better. They want to secede because they're Catalonians and the other people are Spanish, for purely tribalistic reasons. And for the most part, the Catalonians are probably more leftists and more socialist than the rest of the Spaniards. So they'd make things worse. So no, there is no reason to secede, except no justification for secession, except, and the same goes for the South in the Civil War, except to make a society that is freer. And that wasn't true of the South. It's not true of the Catalonians or the Basque or any of the, or splitting up Italy into two, or California seceding or Texas seceding. In none of these cases are you introducing something that's more free as a consequence. Molten Splendor, thank you. $50 question. Thank you. Appreciate it a lot. In Spike Lee's movie, Do the Right Thing, Spike notes that exclusively white people ask him if Mookie did the right thing by throwing the trash can through the window after the police killed Radio Rahim. Black people don't ever ask him that. Why? I think because they take for granted that the pain and the injustice and the horror of it justifies throwing it. Whereas I think white people who have not experienced that, who don't know the depths of the frustration and suffering. And look, I think there is something to this, right? There is something to the fact that, historically at least, blacks are being treated really, really badly, even in New York City. And that justice doesn't always apply to them. And discrimination and racism do exist. And that I don't think white people appreciate the extent of that, and therefore the extent of the rage and anger that would justify somebody throwing the can through the window. So that would be my explanation for it. But look, Spike Lee is in many respects has gone from being against discrimination to being pro-racist, pro-racist woke identity politics. So he's become more and more of a racist over the years. He's become more and more of a supporter of woke intersectionality, all the bad philosophies and ideas on the left. And you can see that as part of all that, as part of the intersectionality, as part of the post-colonialism, whatever, in racism, he is now pro-Palestinian, which all goes together nicely. It all fits perfectly. Thank you, Molten Splendor. Really appreciate it. Jacob says, your yesterday analysis of Rubio, AOC, Musk was amazing. Can't wait for your Western Civilization book. Thank you, Jacob. Really, really appreciate it. And yeah, I'm looking forward to the book as well. I hope we find a publisher, and I hope we get it out there sometime, either late this year or early next year. We will see. The Oceanist says, would love to hear from Dugin on how individualism and racism go together. Well, he's rejecting both. I don't think he necessarily thinks they're the same thing, although he might. Remember, he's a postmodernist, so don't expect logic from Dugin. He's a mystic and a postmodernist. That's quite a unlogical combination. But yeah, he's rejecting individualism. He's also rejecting racism. He wants us all to unite as Christians, and as nation states, with Russia dominating Europe and Asia, and the United States dominating the Americas. That's how I think he sees the world. Roman, how fascist is the CCP PRC under Xi? Well, I mean, if fascism is the control of the economy while allowing people to pretend that they have property rights, but controlling it through regulations and various ways of controls, then it's very fascist. It's clearly much more fascist than socialist, because the CCP does not own the means of production, not big chunks of the economy. It owns some means of production, but it doesn't own most of the means of production, and allows for at least pseudo-private property. Roman, China waived all tariffs with African countries. What has to happen for the rest of the world to stop ignoring this resource-rich and populous region? Well, they have to become egoistic. They have to become selfish. I mean, dropping tariffs to zero is the selfish thing to do, the self-interested thing to do. The problem is that if Europe dropped tariffs with Africa to zero, then Europe would be flooded with food. Interestingly, if it dropped tariffs to zero with Africa, fewer Africans would come to Europe. There'd be less of an illegal immigration problem, because Africa would become wealthier, because it can then produce. It could put these people to work in producing and creating stuff for the Europeans to consume. And right now, they could produce a lot of food. But farmers in Europe would go nuts. They'd freak out, and many of them would go out of business. But the reality is that European land and European people, the human capital is wasted on agriculture. They should be doing high-value things. So, and Africa should be doing relatively low-value thing, which is food production. So what it would take was people realizing that their self-interest, cheaper food, lies in dropping tariffs. The Oceanist, when prices go up, they'll just blame corporate greed again. Yeah, and Trump has, and Elizabeth Warren has. So in that sense, Dugin is right. The left and the right have united against capitalism. Hopper Campbell, if things get really bad, could an official YBS show anti-ICE rally be organized? And what would the rally do? How many people would show up? And what would the rally do? I mean, if they got really bad, what benefit would the rally provide to the world? I don't get it. I don't understand it. I mean, it might provide the people in the rally with some, we did something, but what would it actually do in the world? Nothing. Nobody would pay attention, and it wouldn't be big enough, and I don't think rallies. I mean, unless they're massive, like in Minneapolis, where they really confronted the ICE, and they were there every day, and they were big, and they were everything. Just one-off rallies don't do anything, in my view. Okay, last question. Roman says, if it seems Millet forced the Inflation Statistics Office to remain with an outdated methodology to keep the official number down, the statistician quit. I don't know. I'll have to check it out. I'll have to check it out. Unfortunately, Millet does things that are Trumpist once in a while. unfortunately. But so it's possible, but I'll have to check it out. Thank you, Owen. All right, guys. Thank you. I appreciate the support. Thanks to all the super chatters. I will see you tomorrow. Tomorrow, the show will be, I have to pick up my wife at the airport. So tomorrow's show will be later than usual. It'll be, I think it'll be 6 p.m. East Coast time. That is my expectation right now, 6 p.m. East Coast time. So I will see you. I will see you then. Look forward to you. Bye, everybody. Have a great rest of your week.